Summit. I am so delighted to have our guest today, Rachael Miller. She is the co-founder of the Rosalia Project and a TEDx speaker. She has extensive experience on and in the sea, sailing, studying underwater archaeology at Brown University, marine mammals, and teaching everything from how to pilot ROVs to designing and running Rosalia's project programs. Through her expeditions on board the 60-foot sailing research vessel American Promise, Rosalia protects and cleans the oceans along the New England coastal waters. I'm going to stop there because I think Rachael can tell a much better story than I can. And creative activists, I have to tell you, you never know where you're going to meet somebody or come across somebody who's interesting, has an idea that just clicks with what you're thinking about. So I was at the airport, and Rachael was talking to somebody else. She had just come from a conference, and I was eavesdropping, and I was like, oh, my God, I just love what you're doing. And I told her she's a creative activist, and we had a conversation, and that was long before I knew that I was going to be having the summit. But, that's what I want you to know. This is your opportunity, being on these calls, hearing about different people. You might find that person who's got the idea that clicks with what you've had in mind for years, and you can become partners or feed off of each other and come up with fresh new ideas. So welcome, Rachael.
Thank you. I'm glad I happened to be standing behind you in line at the airport earlier this year.
Yeah, it was wonderful. So let's get started a little bit. Let's talk about, what was behind the Rosalia Project? What inspired you?
And
what is
it? Exactly. Well, I'll start with the fact that the way I see it is that all roads led to Rosalia Project. I didn't know that I wanted to run what is essentially an environmental organization protecting the ocean, but I am a swimmer and a sailor and a skier. I consider skiing a water sport that's just cold water and kind of clumsy on land. So water was always my thing. And in doing competitive swimming and competitive sailing and swimming and sailing for my own joy, all those things definitely instilled in me a great love for it. And you've heard the expression, you protect what you love. So I think that the seeds were planted as a very, very young child, swimming and sailing and that. But what Rosalia Project is we're a nonprofit. We are dedicated to protect and clean the ocean and conserve a healthy, thriving marine ecosystem. That's our official mission. We've been working on the problem of marine debris as our primary focus for the last 7 years. And a couple things make us unique. One is that from the start, we address the whole water column, so surface, the shoreline, and underwater. And it's experience and expertise with remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, that allowed us to do that. Another is that we are addressing the problem from multiple angles. So we're not just cleanup, but we do cleanup. We're not just education, but we absolutely do prevention through education. We also embrace technology and innovation, and we do solutions-based research. Finally, another philosophy of ours that sets us apart is that we believe that the solutions, just like the problem, are going to be found in our urban and coastal waters. And so that, too, is where we focus.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about all those different arenas and how you're addressing some of these things.
We operate from a really amazing research vessel, a sailing research vessel in the summer in the Gulf of Maine. It's called American Promise. We're lucky it's a little piece of American sailing history and was sailed around the world by the first American to sail around the world alone without stopping. His name was Dodge Morgan. But we use this boat. We're keeping it in front as the greenest sailing research vessel in the world. And we're using it as a vehicle and a platform to do our science, to interact with people in direct programs. I'm just fresh off the boat from doing education programs at remote islands in the Gulf of Maine. And we use American Promise to access places that are a little harder to get to. I think if we're going to solve problems, the better we understand them, the better our solutions will be. To a point on the understanding, obviously, we could do a whole lot of work thinking we need to keep understanding more and more and never go to the action side. But we are also we do believe.
Can you talk about who was on this ship with you? Because I think, they think it's going to be all scientists. And, so I think if you could tell people what it's about and how you're, bringing the community into this.
We take people on ages, last year we had ages 21 to 71. This year we had ages about 22 to 62. And so it's all different people. We take on people with different academic, professional, and geographic backgrounds. So this year we had some scientists on board. We had the mom, an accountant, and mom of 2 lobstermen. What an amazing perspective she had. We have a lawyer who does urban planning, coastal urban planning, educators. We get a real variety of people. I think that it's in having a variety of people and their ideas coming into a central place where the very best ideas come.
So it's diversity. It's not looking for one answer from one type of group. You are really looking to bring diverse people and their expertise to the table.
That's exactly. And we live on the boat. We live on American Promise during the summer programs. And the experience of living on a boat is a somewhat intense one. For anyone that's ever done any programs, I think similar to camping, we're with the same people 24 hours a day, sharing in the chores like cooking and cleaning, and sharing in the mission and achieving the mission. It makes for a wonderfully intense and very productive time.
How many people are on your ship at one time?
We have the capacity for 9, and that's separated into 3 professional crew. I'm director of the program, but also captain of American Promise. We bring on a second Coast Guard certified captain, so a second captain, and we have a first mate who happens also to be our research coordinator, so the other full-time Resilient Project person. And then we can have up to 6 other people for overnight and an additional 6, so a total of 12 passengers per day.
Okay. And I think people need to understand what it looks like, to have a full picture of what you're doing and how you're taking people on this journey, into their. Go ahead.
I appreciate that. Oh, I was just going to add, I use the word passengers, but really they're volunteers. That it's there's nothing passaging about it. It's people who are entirely active parts of being part of the crew. So sorry about that.
Okay. All right. And so when you're out there, what are what are you doing? I mean, what does a typical experience look like? Because we had a little conversation before we started this about creativity and getting fresh ideas. So let's talk about that.
When we are on the water, we are always mission-based, and our expeditions have different themes. So we've done 2 expeditions this year. One was all about the microfiber problem. So it turns out our clothing is breaking up and washing out our washing machines. And we are working on a solution. In fact, we've invented a solution to that, a little microfiber catcher you put in your washing machine. So one expedition, we tested the entire Hudson River from the mountains to the sea, and we are using that information to underscore our solution. The other expedition is interesting from a creativity standpoint as well, because we were doing an education program looking to show people or include them in understanding the problem of marine debris in their local place, which were remote islands in the Gulf of Maine, and going the next step to come up with solutions. So we were asking people to be creative in quite a literal way on demand.
And what did that look like? Can you just sort of frame it a little more? Did you have questions every day? Did you have them break into groups of 1 or 2? Did they all come together, whiteboard? Can you talk about that process a little bit?
Of course. For our own innovation, Resilient Projects, we worked as a small group with extremely complementary skills. My husband, James, a co-founder of Resilient Project, is a spectacular big picture thinker. He is 99.9% right brain dominant, so he can really see the whole. So he comes up with the high-level ideas. Our research coordinator, Brooke, she was ocean engineering at MIT and transferred over to Seattle University to study environmental studies. She has the capacity. She went out and learned how to do computer-aided design and work a 3D printer and just be in there with the design program, making James's thoughts turn into reality. And my strengths in the design process are in sort of mechanical troubleshooting and figuring out ways to see if our idea is functional and then to make tweaks to make it more functional. So for our process, we brought together 3 people with extremely different but complementary skills to make incremental steps.
Okay.
Want me to also talk a little bit about our education program that we do with other people?
Yes, definitely. I
Okay,
love
great.
it. You know, I think what you do and how you're approaching it and your ability to share this is really helpful, because I think people need to understand the idea of coming together with complementary skills, breaking things down to manageable pieces, because otherwise, you know, how many people start a project and then they're overwhelmed, or they don't have those complementary skills, and then it's like, oh my God, and then they just fall apart. And I think that's a really key piece of this, to be a creative activist.
Well, I appreciate that, and that is exactly what we were working with people. Those issues were the exact ones we were working with in our education program just now. So we would introduce the problem of marine debris physically, after a discussion in the global sense, by doing a data cleanup, with getting our hands dirty and sandy and salty and muddy and cleaning up a beach and then sorting all that trash to get data. Then we would take that data and we'd really look at it and say, what are the items that are top 5 on this particular shoreline? We were doing all shoreline cleanups. And we would discuss them. Why are they happening? So something like lobster trap buoys or water bottles and foam coffee cups were among the top items on a lot of the beaches. And then we would say to people, we're not asking you to solve the whole problem of marine debris, which is what you just mentioned, right? Like, it is extremely overwhelming, and to sit back and try to solve an entire problem in its entirety, I imagine would quash most creative, any level of creativity in a lot of people. But what we did instead was to say, what item irks you? With adults, we would say kind of what item really pisses you off. With the kids, we were a little more careful with our language and just say, is there something that you really just screaming at you, not just speaking to you, but what is screaming at you? And we would help them zero in. Another item we found a lot of were balloons. And these are remote islands. You can't buy them where we were. And we were finding balloons at the concentration level equal to 8,000 balloons per square kilometer.
Wow, that seems pretty steep, yeah.
It's crazy. And that was extrapolated, that number. But so what we did then is to say, okay, what do you need to do? There's not one way to solve this problem. So now we've broken it into a chunk. And then we said to people that for this particular problem, you could reinvent the thing, because the thing may be faulty in its own self. You could invent a way or design a way to prevent that item from getting into the water. So it may be some other strategy that just, you're not inventing the thing, reinventing the thing, but you're keeping it from escaping. Another way to develop a solution we suggested was come up with messaging and communication about it. So on the education side, whether that was visual or a slogan in a very specific way. It's been a long time since Give a Hoot, Don't Pollute. And I think we might need a new one like that. It's so everywhere. And then we also had a little talk about what influences behavior. And I think a lot of times people, certainly with the environmental problem, we want to solve a problem and it's inherently related to behavior of people. Certainly the problem that we're working on is a human-induced problem, marine debris, trash in our ocean. And one of our philosophies that we teach our volunteers to share when we're at events is our optimism comes from the fact that we made this problem and we believe we can clean it, we can fix it. And so we look at what influences behavior, because if we're going to fix it, we need to do that. We had great conversations. We don't just give people the answers. We make that a discussion and hear what a recent spark of behavior change was in the participants. So it's something really interesting to think about. What's the last thing that happened that made you change your behavior? And what is it? What was it that caused that? And we got some really great answers. We didn't say it had to be an environmentally related or environmental or conservation related behavior change, just anything. And a lot was great information. A lot had to do with credible sources.
Okay, because, I'm really interested in that because it is about how do you move people from apathy to action, which is that same idea. How do you change behavior and get people invested? So I'd love to hear some of their thoughts. What were some of your findings?
Some of the discussion, I would say the number one catalyst for behavior change in a specific way for the people with whom we had this conversation was a really good fact. Presented, sometimes people read that fact, sometimes people saw it through a film. There were some people who were moved to eating less meat or less fish. Obviously, with us, the discussion was organically somewhat more conservation related, but others were as I said, reading it, seeing it, hearing it in a presentation. That was another real significant. Multiple people had shared that they heard something from a presenter and it just struck a chord. And that was enough. I'd say those were the overwhelming.
I love that because I think, that's part of the reason I'm having this summit is because I do believe in the power of film, of storytelling, images, whatever the way you're going to do it, through music. What is that impact? What is that one thing that's going to open up your heart and mind and create that shift in you? So I love it.
Exactly. And the fact is, it could come from one of these interviews. It turns out that the medium by which the message travels is going to be related to the person. Yeah, I'm a visual person. I will probably read or see the thing that catalyzes me to change, where I know a lot of people who are audio people, they could just hear it and it will stick with them. So,
and I think that's the power of storytelling today. That's the power of the spoken word, the poetry jams, all those things. I think that's part of that, recognizing that we all have a different way of engaging in the world.
Exactly, and to sort of embrace that. And I think that conversation helped everyone in the program realize they didn't all have to invent a thing that you can hold in order to get to or suggest a solution for whatever item it was that was screaming at them. And so after that discussion, we set people off with a pen and a paper or just their thoughts to come up with a solution. And in all the cases we did this, we let that happen for a while, and then we came back together for an informal sharing of where people were, just a sort of check-in. And we found that very useful, and we explained that one of my favorite sayings is that there is no such thing as we got it right the first time and every time thereafter center. We call them research and development centers, and we call them that for a reason, because nobody gets it right the first time and every time thereafter. It's everything that we want to do to solve a problem ends up with a fair number of iterations. And so we explain that and hope to make the discussion feel pretty informal and like there were no bad ideas, just ideas, and we wanted to all hear them. And with the high schoolers, 14 to 18-year-olds, as well as with my 24 to 60-year-olds on the boat, really great discussions in that first sort of go around, what are you thinking? And encouragement and tweaking of ideas, and people could contribute their reactions. And then we went back second time to the drawing board. And it was during the second time at the drawing board that people really tightened up their ideas. It was all the time that we would have with people. And it was so interesting to see, because then we asked them to fit their idea into a 5-sentence pitch. And they had to explain sentence number 1, the problem that they were addressing. Number 2, why that problem needed to be solved. Number 3, what their solution is. Number 4, what makes their solution awesome. And number 5, what they need to make it happen.
Oh, and that's wonderful. That broke it down really easily. Yeah, love it.
We had some great ideas. We had regulatory. Someone said, we need fishermen. So again, this is getting very specific, but
right.
The ropes that people use in the fishing industry are photo-degrading. So just to lay in a little marine debris science on you real quick. All the plastic that was ever made, as far as we know, if it wasn't burned, it still exists. So it's a very, very pervasive material. It just breaks down into little tiny pieces in a process called photodegradation. So once the kids, one particular student learned about this, and he said, well, we know this happens. Let's have the rope get switched out before it starts photodegrading into zillions of little pieces. And he wanted to make that mandatory and make it so the ropes were all recyclable. They could be spun around again. And so that was one realistic, not super realistic right now, but not that far-fetched either. There's some cost issues. But it was great to have him think about the problem, why it needed to be solved, what the solution is. For him, what he needed was buy-in. He needed fishermen buy-in. He didn't really need money. He needed people to get on board. Another group.
Did you have ideas and discussions how to get buy-in from people?
We didn't go that far because some of the other examples of ideas were redesigned. So that would be if we could have those kids for another day. We'd love to have done that.
Got it. Okay.
Other ideas were redesigning balloons. So there was a balloon redesign that had the sort of weight integral to the balloon, so that even though it could be elevated, it wasn't actually light enough to fly away, and it was hard to cut away. So that instead of balloons flying off, I mean, they go up, they come down in the ocean, they kill creatures. It's a disaster. I think a lot of people don't realize that this is a very smart and interesting way to deal with that problem. Another young man came up with something that we were able to 3D print a prototype for him, or a model of it, really. And that was basically a storm drain to cover the holes in a boat where the water washes off the deck. Just some really clever ideas. And the kids pitched them not just to everyone on our boat and in their class, but to the whole, we were at Hurricane Island Foundation, the whole Hurricane Island community. And that was in one day, high school kids. It was really great.
Oh, I love the fact that they actually got to pitch their ideas to, because that's so empowering in itself. It allows them to be leaders in the community and an integral part. You know, it gives them value in a way that otherwise they may not have that, and investing in the community. Yeah,
we put a video up on our Facebook page. It's really cute.
All right, give people the opportunity. Tell them where they can find you so we can.
Oh, of course, Rosalia Project. We're on all the social media, rosaliaproject.org, or just on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay. Just want to make sure we cover our bases. Go ahead.
Thank you. It was great. So that's kind of how we were handling this very new education program for us. And we had set out on this 2.5-week expedition to see if that would work, because what we wanted to do is to take our experience with inventing the microfiber catcher and see if we could inspire more people to come up with solutions to this particular ocean problem that we feel very strongly needs to be solved.
Okay, I know that we had a conversation back when I first met you about this project of yours, and have you been able to find the funding for it? Who have you partnered with? How has that come about, and where are you in the process? And I think people need to know that sometimes it may take a little longer. It's not an instantaneous, even though you have a great idea, it may not find the right partner right away.
That is for sure. That is definitely the case. We've been growing slowly and steadily, and each year has been a little bit different, which, to be honest, does make it a little bit stressful as the person in charge of development and getting all of our ideas and actions funded. We started Rosalia Project with much more funding from foundations and I think because we were new and corporate partners and individuals wanted to see our track record before supporting us. Like any nonprofit, we are supported sort of through the typical 3 channels of foundation grants, individual donations, and corporate partnerships. There's one other funding, which is federal or municipal, but in our type of work, there's not that much of that. We have received one marine debris program grant 3 years ago. So as we have continued our work and done more work, we have developed some very meaningful and satisfying and extremely helpful corporate partnerships with companies like the American Chemistry Council and Surf Sweets Organic Candy, Kilroy Realty. These companies have been with us for multiple years. We have relationships with their people on an individual level and do our best to demonstrate or really just do good work and share that good work with them. And we also have some great relationships with Family Foundation, 11th Hour Racing, another organization with whom we've grown, and new partnership starting last year with a group called Parlay for the Oceans, who has very, very similar philosophies to us. And so for advice in the advice department as far as funding goes, it is just like research and development. You take a bunch of steps forward and then a couple steps back, and a couple steps forward and a couple steps back. And when I say back in the funding department, it just means 1 year you may be on getting 30% of the grants to which you apply, and another year on 15. And then the next year back to 30, or that kind of an idea.
I thank you for sharing that. I think that is one of those keys to that people don't recognize, that it can take time. I mean, I've talked to other people and said, yeah, I mean, I had a project. This one woman, Kathy Eldon, she's had a film she's wanted to make for 20 years, and it finally came to this year. And
awesome.
and how do how do you handle that kind of frustration? And it takes courage to be persistent and resilient and to keep going in the face of it appears like it's a failure. You're not going to make it happen.
I agree with you on that. We the way our summer operations work are we only operate as many days as we are funded, and that means that we've had some years where we've had American Promise out for 12 weeks. We've had some for 8 weeks, and we've had some for 6 weeks. And we didn't start at 6 and work up to 12. We just had a 6.5-week season. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we were underfunded in the very big picture, but it also means that we weren't able to get more time funded, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. It does. I had listened to your TEDx talk, and you talk about taking personal responsibility and municipalities taking responsibility. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Of course. We believe that a lot of these problems, or I'll just talk about the problem we talked about, or we're focusing on, which is marine debris, is that it is a complex problem with multiple parties. Essentially, we're all involved in it, and the we is not just individuals, but the we are the people that are providing waste infrastructure, so that would be municipalities, the people who are regulating the way our goods are handled, so there's some federal level there, and there are the people that are responsible for our goods themselves, so the producers. And part of the we broke it, we can fix it philosophy is that is a very all-encompassing we. And take the microfiber problem that we're addressing very specifically right now. We've come up with Rosalia Project's come up with a solution. We're very excited about it. We're working on it hard. We're at prototype stage. And it's a consumer solution. So everybody puts it in their washing machine, and we start preventing microfiber pollution right away. So Rosalia Project, we understand that we also need clothing manufacturers and textile developers and material scientists to do their part to figure out why our clothing is falling apart and what we can do to make it fall apart slower, not at all, in a different way. We need people who are handling our wastewater treatment to also be working on technologies to stop this stuff from flowing into public waterways. And that's what we mean by everyone has a part. And what we say is everyone's got responsibility. Back when we did the TEDx talk 2 years ago to now very specifically with the microfiber problem. We don't expect anyone to hold it on their shoulders.
Okay. What would you say to somebody who does want to get involved, wants to take some, personal responsibility for cleaning up the oceans? And I live by a lake. I don't live by the ocean, but we still have challenges. What would you tell them?
Well, I use the word ocean a lot, but if you think about the ocean is downhill of everything.
Right.
And so whether you live on a lake or you live at the top of a mountain, in fact, the people at the top of the mountain may be even more responsible for clean water than anyone else, since that's the source. So it is about water, all water. It all flows downhill. So all of our work is, I actually live in Vermont, where I live in the middle of a mountain. And Lake Champlain is as precious to us as any part of the ocean. So I appreciate that. My best advice to people is to understand that every effort that anyone makes a difference. And I think people know what they can do. It's a tired expression, but it was developed. It covers it. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. It works. Our partners, Partly for the Oceans, use an expression, the AIR strategy, which is avoid, intercept, and redesign, and it's very similar. When it comes to trash in our lakes and rivers and oceans, the less stuff that exists in the world, the less stuff that's available to end up as trash. So that's the first. That's about reduce and avoid. Just a little effort to try to always bring a reusable water bottle and get tap water. All tap water is more regulated than most bottled water. In fact, in a lot of places it's better. And it's free. So that's kind of fun. People who are already doing that can move up to the next level and remember reusable bags. And if you're doing that, that's super awesome. Go to the next level and remember utensils when you go out to fast food or places that would otherwise give you temporary or single-use utensils. Every little effort works and makes a difference. And then the next would be intercept or recycle or reuse, actually, so that we could do things like improve our reuse rates so that things just don't need to become trash. So the things that we do own can last longer. It absolutely will make a difference. As far as the washing machine and the microfiber stuff goes, for now, while we're getting the microfiber catcher out, if you just wash your clothes less, like only when they're really schmutzy, that will make a difference. And then, of course, recycling and making sure that composting and recycling and all those ways, the more we can divert from landfill, the better for all of us. The materials that are escaping our waste system, from heavy metals to plastics that never go away but just break up, they have the capacity to turn around and poison us. They enter the food chain through fish, and that may be a longer story, and I'm happy to talk about it. But we are protecting ourselves and our kids by protecting our oceans, lakes, and rivers.
I love that. That is great. And we are coming to a close, and I am just so happy you were part of this conversation. I think the material you gave us is so rich, and I hope everybody took notes and make a commitment to do one thing. Think about all the ideas that she just gave you, how you can help keep our oceans clean, keep our families safe, and pick one of them. And if you need to reach out to Rachael, she'll be happy to contact you and share some of her knowledge, her research, and bring you on board in a deeper, richer way. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Rachael, for participating.
Thank you for including me.
Oh, I'm so happy you were here. So we will talk soon.